What's going on, fashion freaks and geeks and fools and folks? It's your girl Sam Shugs. We're back, and I don't really want to do a deep dive into why I've been MIA, but I will definitely be transparent in saying this. I have been experiencing a lot of the D, the big D, and not your D, not that kind of D, but depression, which is in the mouth of many, and it's really talked about on social media and in our society right now. And not only has it been something that I've been comfortable talking about my whole life, but it's also, I think, especially relevant now that so many people are talking about it, just to know that there are people out there who are going through this, and it comes in waves. Sometimes it can last a really long time, other times it can last a very short period, but nonetheless, it's to be taken seriously all the way around. And so I've taken this time to kind of shut myself off and look internally to see what's going on. I've been taking really good care of myself, and I've been getting the help that I need to get out of it. So very happy with the way that things are progressing, and I very much plan on getting back to my intended posting schedule, which would be once or twice a month. So without further ado, we're gonna go ahead and kick off this Brand Basics series video with a conversation that I recently had with a friend of mine who works at a major publication that's revered for its opinions on streetwear and luxury fashion. And as we were conversing, I brought up the point of the importance of looking back on history and informing people as to the stories of these houses and these designers, instead of just focusing on the present moment and looking forward ahead at the future of fashion and what it's to become. And it's not so much saying that I don't think that we shouldn't be consumed by the moment and future moments of fashion, but I do think that having that foundation knowledge of where things have come from and the stories of these big houses and designers that we know and love today, that's that foundation knowledge that you need in order to contextualize a lot of the circumstances and instances that are going on in the industry right now, that will then be the rock for you to reflect back on as you look forward and see, okay, so this has happened historically, how does that predict future events in the industry? And that's honestly a major reason why I do these, videos for the Brand Basics series, is not because I'm infatuated with telling old tales, but more so informing people so they have that baseline knowledge of what has happened in the industry so they can make more educated predictions and guesses as to what's to come. So the British Fashion Council is having their award ceremony in December, and I figured what better time would it be to talk about a lot of these designers that are nominated for awards than for this Brand Basics series. So you guys were awesome enough to participate in the polls that I did on Instagram, and I took the winners collectively, put them all in a hat, and picked out one name that, of course, I would have pulled it out because it's very appropriate to start this whole thing off, and this specific house and designer behind it really pioneered the way of the fashion industries, in specifics to haute couture. So this brand and the person behind it have been complemented by the likes of Christian Dior and Coco Chanel and royalty and aristocracy of his time. So if you couldn't guess already, and I'd be surprised if you already did, and if you looked at the title, then trying to have some surprise here. But surprise or otherwise, we're gonna be talking about Balenciaga. So kick back, put your feet up, relax, grab your joint, grab your cigarette, grab your glass of wine. It's Sunday night, and we're gonna talk about who is Cristobal Balenciaga and why Balenciaga is so hot right now. So Balenciaga. Most of the time, houses are named after the last name or the surname of their founder, and Balenciaga is no different. It was founded on behalf of Cristobal Balenciaga. He is from the northernmost region in Spain, in the Basque Country, in Guetaria, and he was born in 1895. Shout out to all of those 95 babies out there, myself included. And his mom was a seamstress, so he spent a majority of his upbringing threading needles, piecing together patterns, and creating these beautiful garments alongside his mom. It was among these formative years of his life that he turned 12 and decided to become an apprentice to a local tailor. And it was this experience that gave him the opportunity to become a huge star within luxury fashion and as a designer. in which he was presented the opportunity to design a dress for the Maîtresse de Cacatores, which is, in layman terms, the great-grandmother of Queen Fabiola of Belgium. So after he had created this beautiful dress for her, she was in complete awe of the craftsmanship, not only because of the beautiful finished product, but to also learn that he had not only designed the garment, but he had cut and sewn it all himself. And just being in awe of the craftsmanship and the talent that he had, she decided to take him on as her mentee and ended up sending him to Madrid to receive formal training in the art of being a fashion designer. After he received his classical training, in 1919 he decided to open up his first store in San Sebastian and then decided to open up 2 more locations, one in Madrid and one in Barcelona. He was successfully running his operation for about 20 years up until 1936 when the Spanish Civil War broke out. It lasted until 1939, but Balenciaga decided to get out while he could, and he closed up all of his stores in Spain and moved his operation to Paris in France. At the time, he was known for dressing royalty and the aristocrats, but while his designs were technically inventive then, they exploded in terms of creativity and innovation when he moved to Paris, not only because of his environment having been changed, but also his mind just being opened up to a whole world of possibility in terms of not only design, but fashion and arts and music and culture in general as well. Years go by and he's set up his operation, and in 1951 he decided to completely reinvent the silhouette of a dress by broadening shoulders and removing the waistline. And years later, in 1955, designed the first tunic dress and did a modern take on the chemise dress, which was originally and traditionally known for being kind of like a smock or a shift dress that was worn as an undergarment back in Renaissance times. But because he took that and gave it a fresh perspective, it was a new concept for the times, but was not novel in any sense of the word. And in 1959, he went on to create the Empire line that had really high-waisted dresses and coats cut very similar to those of kimonos. And during this time of creating these really inventive shapes, he was also doing a lot of teaching, in which disciples of his were the likes of Oscar de la Renta, André Courgès, and Hubert de Givenchy. So he was a huge influence in these upbringings of designers that went on to create their own houses and have popularity and fame and are well accredited and held highly to this day. So a year later in 1916, Balenciaga was invited and given the extreme honor of creating the wedding dress for Fabiola de Morat y Aragon when she became wed to King Baudouin I of Belgium. And this was one of the designs that put him in the public eye on a global scale, and is revered as being one of his most iconic designs and has been donated to the Cristobal Balenciaga Foundation, in which it is now being housed in a museum back in Spain. And these designs that were larger than life and really pushed the limit and boundaries on what was at the time defined as classical design or as haute couture, and especially the 50s and 60s, he was known for having that fresh, iconic take on something that was new and novel by expanding certain aspects and components of a design and completely reinterpreting them in that process. And after 30 years of being in design, he decided to retire formally at the beautiful age of 74, and it wasn't until years later in 1972 that he ended up passing away back in his home country of Spain. Despite having closed his stores in 1968, all of them, by the way, not just like 1 or 2, he closed the entire operation pretty much, and his heirs decided to continue on with the Balenciaga brand and sell fragrances up until it was acquired by a large German luxury group who introduced ready-to-wear. But the passing of Balenciaga was one to be noted because he was so crucial to the formative years of haute couture, in which people like Christian Dior and Coco Chanel found that he was one of the most iconic designers of couture at the time. Christian Dior himself said that he was the master of us all being the likes of Christian Dior, Yves Saint Laurent, Coco Chanel, and Coco as well said that he was the truest definition of couture that ever was. So to be named those two things by those two people just goes to show the talent that he had in completely changing the current and the tide of the fashion industry. So not only was he a huge wave maker, but he ended up paving the way for a majority of designers, especially these days, that are pushing the boundaries on what we classify as being true to size. Whereas, you know, you see in the likes of Vetements and even Raf Simons, where a lot of these larger-than-life cuts are being introduced and adopted by society, like oversized blazers, the term oversized being used so much, oversized hoodies, oversized this, oversized that, chunky dad sneakers. All of those things can be traced in one way, shape, or form back to Cristobal Balenciaga. So here's to you. So after this German luxury group acquired the brand and decided to introduce ready-to-wear, they had appointed several designers that did a horrible job in pioneering that section within the house, so they decided to change things up a little bit years later. So in 1997, they decided to bring in the French designer Nicolas Ghesquière, who was formerly an apprentice for Jean-Paul Gaultier, so his talent and ability was very much defined from the get-go, and so it was a natural progression for the brand to want to woo him into becoming the creative director of Balenciaga. And it was because of that appointment that ended up catching the attention of Kering, and in 2001 acquired the house mainly to secure the talent of Ghesquière. And it was his work for Balenciaga that ended up fashioning pretty much all body types within the 2000s and took Balenciaga from the shadows right back into the limelight. And one of his more iconic designs was that of the neoprene dress, which again was worn and beloved by the entire century and society as a whole for not only being one of the more comfortable silhouettes, but the inventiveness of that use of that material in such a classic shape. Ghesquière also took inspiration from the likes of Japanese designers and artists like Kamsai Yamamoto and Star Warsy kinds of figures that had a very futuristic edge to it in regards to recreating classic cocktail attire by making short dresses and formal office wear. And it was in 2006 that he did his fall-winter collection that was a true nod to Cristobal with these really rounded silhouettes that was iconic for Cristobal at the time when he was alive and flourishing at Balenciaga. And not only was his ambition for ready-to-wear a huge success, but also what he provided in accessories for consumers was a huge hit as well. He created specific bags that are still beloved today, like the Laureate bag, and serve as huge moneymakers for the brand. In November of 2012, Ghesquière decided that he had run his course as creative director at Balenciaga and decided to become that of the creative director for women's wear over at Louis Vuitton, which he remains today. And upon his departure, the appointment of American designer Alexander Wang came to be, in which there was a lot of overlap in terms of the technical wear side of things that was kind of sporty and dark and mysterious and enigmatic. But after a 3-year stint at the brand, it turned out not to be the best fit between Balenciaga and Alexander Wang, so they ended up going their separate ways. And that is when, in 2015, the man of the hour, who was the head of Vetements, Demna, decided to become appointed to creative director for the house and has pioneered the success of the brand in regards to streetwear and contemporary fashion today. So not only do we owe the success of the house to Cristobal, but also to Demna, really, because his work at Vetements was pushing the boundaries on what was appropriate and acceptable in society in terms of street dress and made it the norm. These large, oversized items and completely deconstructed then reconstructed pieces that were walking down the runway became immediately recognizable and struck a chord within consumers for being comfortable, risky fashion without it being uncomfortable or unattractive. If anything, the ugliness or the unattractiveness or the tabooness of these items became the charm of the entire brand. Demna has quoted many times that he likes to see fashion as a reflection of what's going on in society around us, and that's why there's been this uptick in cozy wear or comfort and luxury, and having all of those things kind of get blended together. And that's why luxury streetwear has risen to the point that it's at. It's because he was looking at all of this traditional fashion and wanted to do something that played really into the lives of consumers today. So again, you'll see a lot of this cozy attire, but also things that are practical, you know, phenomenal trench coats and jackets, impeccably made knits and blouses and trousers as well. All of those things paint this beautiful picture as to what people are wearing on the streets and what they want to be wearing, which is something that's both functional, has unique form, and gets a stylistic point across. So that's a little recap of the Balenciaga brand. If you have any comments on the brand itself and whether you think it should be nominated Brand of the Year, leave a comment down below and make sure that you like this video, because the most number of likes on the video will also warrant what you guys think should be the winner of this year's Brand of the Year award at the Fashion Awards in 2018 this coming December. Thanks for tuning in, guys. Keep tuning into my channel both here on YouTube and on Instagram. I throw out polls all the time to get your feedback on little things and also help just kind of pave the way as to where we want to go with this channel. So I'll see you guys on those platforms. Thanks so much. Enjoy your week. Sugar Woman out.